Do you worry about ransomware, data breaches, reputation damage, especially from phishing attacks, on employees working from home? The facts are, top cloud security tools have a 15% failure rate. 51% of phishing is social media based. Pixum knows because Pixum detects and stops breaches at point of click. Pixum's AI real-time solution detects actual fraud happening in a browser and stops it. Know your real security gaps. Get a phishing actualization test free at securityweekly.com/Pixum. That's PIXM. Today's connected world leaves no room for errors. Neustar reliably secures those connections. Neustar's cloud solutions, which include web application security, DDoS protection, DNS services, IP geolocation, and threat intelligence, ensure network availability across the globe. With over 20 years of award-winning security experience, Neustar proudly enables and protects digital assets of some of the world's largest enterprises. Find out how your company can benefit from the power of Neustar's trusted connection by visiting securityweekly.com/Neustar. Secure your world with Neustar. Always on, ultra secure. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. If you missed Security Weekly Unlocked, you can now access all of the content on demand, whether you registered or not, by visiting securityweekly.com/unlocked. You can go there and get all the great content. So do that. Jarrett Rodrick is a retired cyber network defender and cyber warfare specialist in the U.S. Army. Today, he's going to walk us through the first steps you can take to become a cybersecurity SOC analyst. Welcome, Jarrett.
Hey, thanks for having me, Paul.
It's nice to have you on the show. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for your service.
I appreciate it.
So, Jarrett, what got you interested in developing materials on how to be a SOC analyst?
You know, I never thought about it personally. It was something that my co-author actually approached me about. So this was his project. Tyler Wall, shout out to him. Couldn't make it today. You know, it was his project. He wanted to get a new influx of talent into the workforce, right? That's something that both him and I agree upon. And when he approached me to ask to co-author his book, you know, I thought about it for about a minute. I was like, yeah, I'm in, because it's really something I've noticed since leaving the Army and joining VMware, that, you know, we have a shortage of talent, of new young talent in cybersecurity, specifically the SOC.
Mm. Yeah, there's so many different aspects to getting people interested in coming into cybersecurity. I think the SOC is a good angle to take. I think a lot of the recent discussions have been around, how do we get people in all these other areas? But what we're talking about, is it entry-level tech is kind of what we're talking about, right?
I think it is, right? I think that when you're looking at the paradigm of knowledge needed to be a security engineer versus a security architect and a SOC analyst, the lowest barrier of entry is SOC analyst. And both Tyler and I agree that is where we want to focus on. How do we start a career in cybersecurity? Well, a SOC analyst is the best way, because you don't have to know everything about a SIEM, or you don't have to know everything about an IDS. You can come in and learn that stuff along the way and move up the ladder, as it were, in that field.
Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily stay in tech either. It's kind of one of those, I think, tech inroads into cybersecurity, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you find that people have to have a degree or experience? Like what's required to kind of get the bare minimum to even feel comfortable applying for a junior SOC analyst?
That is a great question. And if I can share a little bit of my background, I have an associate degree with general studies. Nothing in my college time was prepared me for being a SOC analyst. So, I don't necessarily think that a college degree is required. My background came from reclassifying into the Cyber Network Defender course with the U.S. Army. That was a fire hose. Frankly, it was 14 weeks long, 7 SANS courses back to back.
Yep, I'm familiar with that program. Wow. Yeah,
it was a fire hose. And in preparation for that, if I can share a quick anecdote, there was a lot of terms that I didn't know. I was a combat arms soldier, and I actually subscribed to Enterprise Security Weekly so I could, hear these terms that are common in this new field I'm joining, and then I would go afterward listening and Google them and learn what they are. That's what I did in preparation for the course.
You already had thousands of military acronyms rolling around in your head, and then you took 7 SANS courses back to back to back.
Yeah, it was a fire hose drinking from it, right? So, 7 SANS courses, 5 GX certifications in 14 weeks. It was baptism by fire. And over the years, luckily I didn't have to pay for those. The Army paid for them. But over the years, I've accumulated 11 SANS courses and 9 GX certifications from the Army. So, it was definitely a benefit to, in lieu of going to college, SANS really provided the education I needed. And then the Army provided the hands-on experience that was required to join the industrial cybersecurity force.
I like your comment about the acronyms, though, because if you've ever tried to talk, let's say, with like one of your neighbors or friends that's not in cybersecurity, like even if you practice it, sometimes you just can't help but use some of these acronyms and terms, and then you're looking at the person you're talking to, and you're like, oh, I just lost that person, right? And to us, even the most basic ones are kind of second nature, and I think that's important to call that out to enable people to come into our field, Jarrett.
I think so. And, luckily the Army helped me prepare for that as well. Many of the network owners that we were working with during my time, I was working for Army Cyber, specifically the Cyber Protection Brigade out of Fort Gordon, Georgia. We were working with network owners that weren't necessarily technical people. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what we had to do was, put it in layman's terms that anyone could understand. And, I know, personally, I've been asked by several people, especially during the pandemic, I'm working from home. It's, we're able to continue work, thank goodness, through this pandemic. And there's people that can't. And those people are like, well, how did you get in this field? Because this is something I might want to look into. And, that's the point of the book. The book isn't for, your listeners, Paul, to be honest. Mm-hmm. People who listen to your podcast are in this field already. This is for the people who are asking them, like, I see you working. I see that you were able to continue this work during the pandemic. How do I start that process and get in that field without having to go back for 4 years of college? The book addresses that. The book is, it's meant for that primer to get, that first step in the first foot in the door.
Yeah, it is funny. When I worked for Tenable, and you got to tell people what you do. It's like, oh, I work for a vulnerability management company, and they're like, wait a minute, what's vulnerability management? That's a great example of like just how sometimes the silo. So does the book address some of that, Jarrett? Sorry, Ty.
It does. It covers. It doesn't necessarily tell you how to answer that question. Like, what do you do? What's exactly what does you do for your company? But it does talk about a day in the life of a SOC analyst. Mm-hmm. Right. This is what you can expect. Here's some prerequisite skills. Not necessarily things that are college course driven. This is what an IDS is. This is what a SIM does. Yeah. And this is how it's important to your day-to-day operations as a SOC analyst.
Tyler?
Well, I was just gonna comment that, let alone double clicking to intrusion detection or anything, or when talking to my colleagues and neighbors, I usually just end up saying I work in computers, right? I mean, the eyes are gloss over at that. I would love to see some additional research, and I don't think it's pertinent to this book, but the path to success for SOC analysts starts at exactly what you've written. And I love that kind of, how do you get in? How do you get involved? And I think that's super important to help get people excited about solving the problem of lack of resources in cyber. And then I also would love to see research done, whether it's by you or by, some colleague of yours, that talks about the growth path for that similar role. And how do you go from step 1 to 2 to 3 to, really being the expert in your field and whatever that means with regards to a SOC analyst. I think someday, as we continue to fill in those resources, it would be very valuable for people to grow in that manner.
No, I 100% agree.
I know that's not a question. You can just agree. It's fine.
No, we do talk about the progression of a SOC analyst in the book through different SOCs, right? And different. We talk about the difference between a corporate internal SOC and an MSSP versus even what's expected of a SOC analyst in the U.S. military or a federal service. So, each one is different. That progression looks very different for each one of those. A SOC director in MSSP is not equal to a SOC director in an internal SOC.
Yeah, and then you're starting to even see expansion into application security centric SOCs, and like there's all sorts of different abstraction layers that get layered on top. Go ahead, Paul.
Absolutely.
Well, I was just saying, there's a lot of parallels into healthcare too. And Ron Gula was on, I believe, last week, right, talking about data care was one of the things that he's promoting. And I like mirroring some of the aspects of a healthcare career to cybersecurity. That, like, not everyone needs to be a brain surgeon, right? There's lots of other opportunities to get into the field. But I like your book a lot because it gives people a perspective into like what it's like to work. And my wife runs into this. She works in healthcare, and she started out in X-ray. And she'll tell stories of like, people come in the X-ray program and they think that's what they want to do until they have to step foot into an X-ray room and see someone's bone sticking out of their leg. And a smaller percentage of them go, yeah, that's not for me at all. Like, they just can't deal with it at all. So to give folks who may want to come into cybersecurity, Jarrett, that kind of insight into here's what it's like, I think is a positive way to do that. Because even in a well-established field such as healthcare, they still have that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talk about that. Now, you're not going to see bones sticking out, hopefully
not,
as a SOC analyst. But, we have seen some weird stuff come across emails, right? Some phishing campaigns and some other odd stuff come across. That's a story for another time, off air, maybe.
Yeah. But also, my wife, too, she'll explain. She does sonography, ultrasounds. And a lot of people just haven't spent the time to understand, like, what's the difference between an X-ray, an MRI, a CT scan, and an ultrasound. And I think it's the same thing when people come to cyber, like, wait, patch management versus vulnerability management versus threat intelligence. What do all those terms mean, right? And I think having work such as your book that explain that is very positive.
And we go into the different external and internal teams you might interact with on a day-to-day basis. We talk about compliance, governance, risk. We talk about vulnerability management versus security engineering, security architecture. We even go into some of the three-letter agencies that you will, interact with in the case of an incident, right? So, we do cover all the, second and third layer abstracted teams you will interact with.
What are some of the stories in there that you're particularly fond of, Jarrett?
My favorite chapter is the final chapter. And what we did, and this was actually 100% my co-author Tyler's idea, and he coordinated all this. We have a compilation of short stories, SOC stories, if you would. It's and the first one is my favorite. It's by Khalil Davis. He's a young SOC analyst, 2 years experience, no college degree, no technical certifications, and he got his foot in the door. And he's progressing through that ladder that many of us have already progressed through. And, his story, I hope, serves as an inspiration to the readers of our book that, it doesn't require hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, and it doesn't require dozens of technical certifications to get in this field. It takes, a personal drive. It takes the ability to research on your own and, doing the work, putting the work in to get in this career. And this career is, ever growing, thanks to, all the different compromises and the news stories out there that, X was compromised, Y was Y company had that breach. So, it's ever growing. And I hope people, the readers of our book, take that as inspiration.
Jarrett, you think folks require that there's some aspects of the hacker mindset or culture to work in this field? You just gave some examples, right? You've got to be persistent. You've got to be able to research on your own. You've got to be curious. Does that apply for most people who may want to aspire to work in cybersecurity, in your opinion?
I think it should, right? I don't think you need that to come into the field, but I think you should nurture that and build that want to learn how to compromise a certain system or how to, circumvent a security control to better understand how the security control works, right? To better monitor and think about, okay, if I see this alert trigger, this is what it means. that was something I told my soldiers when I was, on my way out of the Army, was if you just put in the 9 to 5, you're going to be mediocre at best, in my opinion. You need to have a passion for this. If this is what you want to do, then your passion is going to dictate how high you can go. But to your point, yeah, I agree. I think you do need to have that hacker mindset to be successful in this career field.
And I think one of the drivers for that is the pace at which technology and cybersecurity moves, that there's always something new. And I think one of the great qualities of a hacker is taking something that you may have no idea what it is and go, wait, I got to go learn that, right? I mean, I've interviewed hackers that have studied how your ears and brain process audio. Audiology? Is it called audiology? Right? And I'm like, do you have a background in that? And they're like, no. I wanted to look at the security of natural language processing, so therefore I read all these books and then applied that. I feel like you have to be willing to learn new things all the time, and I think that's a lot of fields, right? But our field moves really, really fast because we're kind of alongside of, or however you want to put it, with technology.
Absolutely, right. We have a whole chapter dedicated to the cloud and monitoring the cloud. Mm-hmm. So, as an example, right, with the Army, we never dealt with the cloud. We had started moving into the AWS cloud environments, but we weren't responsible for monitoring that yet. And coming out and going straight into VMware, where cloud is prevalent, it was a learning curve, right? I had to go and learn the AWS platform. I had to go and learn the Azure platform, and the logs associated with that. It's, to your point of, a hacker wants to dedicate, a bit of time to learning one subject, and they do that on their own. We have to be able to do that as well. But the bigger the bigger difficulty for us is that we have to do it across multiple different technologies, right? A hacker can focus on one technology and get really good at it.
This is what I'm interested in. I want to go hack some satellites, so I'm going to go learn how to, yeah.
But as a defender of a network, you need to know all the different entry points into your network. You need to know what lateral movement will look like in your network. You have to basically work through the entire APT kill chain and understand, if I was put your red hat attacker hat on, and how would I do it in this network?
Right. Or even just understand the technology, Jarrett. As a defender, I go, you look at the assets on your network and you're like, wait, what are those? Those are time clocks. Well, wait, how do those work? Like, I gotta go figure out how those work. Yeah, Chronos, right? To be able to defend it, I'm like, wait, I gotta understand how it works.
Chronos on networks.
All the time, right? I guess it was a pretty good example. But like, I gotta go learn about that to see how it functions. Sure, I can go ask people, but like, I gotta go do some research on it, right? Because it's on my network.
Absolutely.
And you got to put on that attacker hat and think, okay, now how can I abuse this?
Yep.
How would it benefit someone to abuse this time clock? Because on the enterprise side, a lot, like everybody thinks you're getting hacked by Russian hackers all the time, and you're defending against nation states. And maybe that's more true nowadays. But when I was a chief incident handler, it was all internal stuff. It was all, hey, HR says this person is, doing something,
cheating on their time card, right?
Could you go, read their email, or, like I worked a couple stalking cases. There were people dealing drugs internally. Every now and then you got to work with the FBI, but more often, like you just needed to understand, even those insider threats, which I think gets downplayed a lot because those don't get announced as breaches because they're not really breaches, right? But they happen all the time. And of course, companies aren't going to share them, but I don't know if that matches with your experience, Jarrett.
100%. Right. So, when I stepped into VMware, let me take a step back. When I was working for the Army, insider threat was one of the bigger, driver for most of the incidents I was part of. With that, not every insider threat is malicious. A lot of those you just realized was user error, and it caused, admin left a loophole open, and it was used by a tech savvy person, or it was found as a vulnerability and it was investigated as an insider threat, but wasn't an insider threat. So when I stepped into VMware, a lot of our detections were around external threats, and something I've been trying to champion from the inside is, we need to build our insider threat monitoring portfolio a little bit better. And that, putting that attacker hat on of, if I was a malicious insider, what would I do? Based on the permissions and the privileges I've been given inside the network, this is the route I would take. And then we build, as a SOC analyst, trying to improve our monitoring portfolio, we build those use cases and those detections around what I would do as an attacker.
Jarrett, tell us a little bit about the book. Where can you get it? How do you consume it? How available is it?
Sure. It's available officially this month. You can get it from apress.com, Barnes & Noble, or Amazon. It's $35 for the hard copy. I believe $22 for the ebook. And we would really appreciate if everyone got the word out about it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I did see it.
Fresh talent.
I did see it on Amazon. It did not have any reviews yet, and it has recently been released, so that's understandable. But yeah,
I just ordered it because I've got a few mentors that are literally looking for trying to get their foot in the door in SOC jobs right now. And I'm on a weekly basis working with them on what they need to be doing. And as a mentor, like I need a better framework for how to train them because, back when I was on the enterprise side, it's been long enough now where I never worked in a SOC. Like SOC was a shared role for everybody in the InfoSec teams that I was on.
We were the SOC
back in the day. Right. And I guess we kind of did. Like after we got the SIM, we did have people pretty much dedicated to doing threat hunting and SOC-like roles. We just didn't call it a SOC. But I'm hoping this is something that can help me with mentoring and maybe something that I can send to some of my mentees also for them to read through.
Well, hey, I appreciate the support, Adrian, and I hope it does pay off for you and it helps the people you're mentoring.
Thanks for putting it out there.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Jarrett, for coming on the show. The book is Jumpstart Your Analyst Career in Cybersecurity. You can find it on Amazon, and if you just Google search for it, you come up with all kinds of options. I like Adrian's idea of giving it to people that you're mentoring, and I think it also kind of fosters that notion that we should be mentoring people. So, Jarrett, awesome stuff. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Coming up next is the Enterprise Security News. Stay tuned.